Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another video. My name is Manny. In case you're new here, or welcome back. We're in a little bit of a different setup today. Can't believe this is finally happening, but I am so happy to officially announce that I am starting my own podcast. That's what you're listening to right now. I'm actually kind of shook saying that, to be honest. I never really imagined that I would be doing this for real, but it is really happening and I'm really doing this and I'm really excited about it. Okay, so let's kind of get into the details. To be honest, this is not the first episode of the podcast. This is kind of just like a little trailer so you can watch and see if you're interested in what I'm going to be talking about on my podcast. And in case you are, then you can follow all the socials and stuff like that. But first things first, let's get into the name of the podcast. So my podcast is called Over Easy, like the way that you cook your eggs. And I thought that was such a cute and adorable and also perfect name for what I really want this podcast to encompass. Basically, when I was planning out my podcast, I really wanted it to kind of focus on both lighthearted and deep conversations, kind of like what you would talk about to your friends or your family over a conversation over brunch. And I freaking love brunch. It's like one of my favorite meals of all time, to be honest. So I really took inspiration from that. Then I kind of got thinking about brunch, eggs. Eggs are part of brunch. Obviously, my favorite way to cook eggs is over easy. And that is kind of how we landed on that name. I thought it was very cute and it kind of just reminds me that when I talk on this podcast, we kind of feel like we're just one-on-one talking at brunch, talking over a meal, a very nice meal, and just having a chill conversation, which is kind of what I want to focus on for this podcast. Anyways, that's enough about this podcast. In case you are new here, hi, I'm Manny. And I'm going to do a quick introduction to myself just in case you're new and you found this on Spotify, or maybe this is just the first video that you're watching. My name is Manny. I'm currently 21 years old and I'm living in Vancouver, Canada. I go to the University of British Columbia and I study psychology and minor in commerce. So I'm going into my fourth year this September, which is honestly wild because I cannot imagine me not being in school. But anyways, I have always loved, I don't really know how to explain this. I think the best way to describe it is I've always loved learning about people, if that makes sense, and also how all people are different, which seems like really obvious. Obviously, we're all different, but when you really get down to it, or when I think about it at least, it's really interesting how parenting choices, where you grow up, how much money you have, what school you go to can all affect how you grow up very heavily. And that's always been one of my most, I would say, thought about topics in my head. When I meet someone new, all I really want to get to know about them is how they became who they are, how their circumstances affected their passions, their dreams, what they're inspired about, stuff like that. So that's kind of what drew me to being interested in podcasts and stuff like that. But I'm going to get into the lighthearted stuff. We can talk about more about why I started a podcast in the next episode, because that's definitely a big segment that I want to cover. But anyways, other things about me that I think are interesting. I don't know. So I've grown up in Vancouver basically ever since I was little. I was actually born in China though, not in Canada. I really love going outdoors, hiking, camping, paddleboarding, surfing, all those kinds of things I love. And I think that's just part of being grown up in Vancouver. That's just kind of something you're born with. And honestly, I don't know how else to describe myself. I think I'm quite above average, but not special at anything. That's kind of sad to say, but I think that'll make sense when I get into my life story and stuff like that in the official first episode of this podcast. But that's kind of who I am. I thought that I had a really relatable perspective when making a podcast, so I thought that it would be interesting to hear about. And yeah, I think that's about me. It's honestly, I hate when people ask like, oh my God, can you introduce yourself in like 2 sentences? That's why I did not thrive in my first year of university because I was so bad at introducing myself and just telling people what I was like or what I enjoyed and stuff like that. So now that you have kind of heard about me and also that I'm starting a podcast, I guess the most logical thing to go over next is what you're going to find in the future on Over Easy. And that is a very interesting question because, to be honest, I'm not totally sure completely. I think the biggest thing that I can say about what I want this podcast to be about is kind of life through a different perspective. As I said before, I've always been really interested in how different life circumstances kind of change the way that you grow up and just change who you are in general. And I think that's kind of really what I want to focus my podcast on. I also think learning about others and what they're interested in has always been something that really like got me thinking and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be a big part of this podcast as well. I've kind of planned out the first few episodes of this podcast, and I can tell you that it's going to be a mix of what I've learned through my experiences in life in my short 21 years, and also just like fun, lighthearted content that you can listen to while you're doing laundry or just driving, you know, like embarrassing stories from my life or like moments from high school I've learned from, stuff like that. And I also want to get into deeper topics, kind of about like learning about religion and society and the patriarchy and everything like that. I think those are also very loaded and interesting topics to talk about that are definitely not talked about enough, at least not from like a perspective that I hold, like a young adult woman of color in university, I guess. I've definitely wanted to hear more about it, and I think that would be something interesting to talk about. So that's kind of what you'll find on this podcast. Honestly, it's quite just centered around life. That's really all I can say. Lifestyle, advice, stuff like that. If you are a watcher of my YouTube channel, you will know that I create this series called Let's Chat from time to time. I usually do it like once a month. And in those videos, I basically just sat down in front of a camera and just talked about whatever was on my mind. Typically, I would do those videos when I was kind of struggling with something. So, for example, in the winter time of last year, I was going through like getting over friendships and stuff like that and starting to grow out of friendships that I had been a part of for many years and kind of coming to terms with that. So that was like a topic of one of my Let's Chats. Therapy sessions, like what I learned in therapy, stuff like that. That's always been a big topic of my Let's Chats and what I like to talk about. And also just like university in general, because it is a very loaded topic and a very big topic to talk about. But if you watch those videos and you enjoy them, I would honestly say that this podcast is kind of just going to be like that. It's going to be the same vibe, just better audio quality, most likely, and a better background. I want to change this wall. If you're a video watcher, I want to change the wall that's behind me. I don't know what I want to do yet. I started a little collage wall, but my printer ran out of ink, so I never finished it. But I don't know what I want to do. I definitely want to do something to make it a little cute because I think this will be my setup for all my podcast episodes. So we'll see. Anyways, if you enjoy those Let's Chat videos, I would honestly say that this podcast is going to be the same. So I hope you enjoy. I think one thing that's going to be better about this podcast instead of my Let's Chat is that it's going to be a little more organized in terms of the flow of the episode and also what we're going to be talking about. Because to be honest, when I was filming my Let's Chats, I was just sitting down, filming and talking about literally whatever came on my mind. And now that I watch some of them back, find that some of them are a little like all over the place because sometimes my brain is just like that. It's normal. But I think people would appreciate if I really delve deeper into specific topics and really explored all about it instead of like just jumping in a little bit in one topic and then skipping to the next. At least for me personally, I really enjoy when people spend a lot of time talking about one topic and all of the facets about it. So that being said, I hope you enjoy this podcast and everything that's to come. I'm really excited for the development of this. If you want to keep up with the podcast, there is a podcast Instagram. It's at Overeasy the podcast. I will link it down below. Also follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everywhere else that you get your podcasts, because that's pretty exciting to me that my voice will be like on Spotify and stuff like that. But give it a follow. If you prefer watching the video version, for sure subscribe to my YouTube channel, because the video versions of the podcasts will be posted on my YouTube channel. And to kind of end off this podcast trailer, I want to do a segment that I hope to implement every single week on my podcasts, and that is what I call Rose, Bud, and Thorn. In case you don't know, Rosebud Thorn is basically like a checkup, an icebreaker kind of that people do. I remember my high school advisor teacher, or like homeroom teacher. She was a drama teacher, and every advisor session we would do Rosebud Thorn, and it was like my favorite thing ever. Like to this day, Rosebud Thorn is my favorite icebreaker. Basically, if you're not sure, Rose is something good that has happened to you recently, Bud is something that you're looking forward to, and Thorn is something that's maybe not as good in your life right now, but yeah, it's always good to hear about like the current events in people's life and what's going on and stuff like that. For me personally, I'm a really nosy person, so I've always really enjoyed like listening about people's mundane details of their life. I feel like a lot of people don't like sharing about them, but honestly, it's like one of my favorite things about getting to know someone. So let me share my Rose, Bud, and Thorn. Let me think. I honestly didn't prepare this. Okay, so I guess my rose, I have 2 roses. I'm gonna have 2. I'm cheating. I'm gonna have a couple of each, because honestly, life is pretty good right now. My first rose is that typically on Saturdays, I used to work pretty much like 11:30 to 4:30 at my dance studio teaching 2 dance classes, and it was really fun. I love it, and I'm going to continue doing it in September, but we just got off on summer break, so now I have my Saturdays completely empty and chill, which is why I decided to film my first episode today, because I had the time. So I'm really looking forward to my entire summer and having Saturdays free. My other rose was that last night my boyfriend and I went on a dinner date in restaurant, like dining in, for the very first time this year. And honestly, my boyfriend and I haven't eaten in a restaurant since last summer, so it was really, really like different and like exciting, because you know, with COVID kind of closing out and more vaccinations, things are opening up again, like life is kind of going to go back to normal, which I'm really excited about, which leads me to my bud, which is that from last night's dinner, now I can really tell that like life is kind of opening up again. Obviously, I'm still going to be careful and stuff like that, but like looking forward to that, and also like potentially going back to university, not even potentially, like for sure going back to campus this fall for my 4th year is just really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it. Like this summer is going to be so fun. And my thorn, I would guess, I honestly don't have a ton of bad things going on. I guess like I'm a little tired today, but like nothing major, nothing bad has happened really to me last few days. So that's my rosebud and thorn for today. I hope you're doing well. Let me know if you have a rosebud and thorn in the comments down below if you would like. That's going to wrap up my first, like my podcast trailer. I'm kind of shocked that I'm really doing this. Like, okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent right now, but I've always wanted to start a podcast, and the fact that this is actually happening right now, and that I'm actually filming my first episode and stuff like that, and like this is going to go live, and that this is really happening. Like I really put my effort and my focus on this, and now it's really coming into fruition. It just blows my mind, and I'm really, really impressed with myself, to be honest, because I'm really excited for what's going to happen with this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm excited that this exists, that Overeasy is real now, and I'm just really happy in general. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this episode for real. I hope you enjoyed, and if you are looking forward to the podcasts, again, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel for the video versions. Follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. And also follow the podcast Instagram, Over Easy the Podcast. I want to post like asking for questions and topics and stuff like that on there, so that's probably the best way to reach me. And I hope you enjoyed this first episode, and I hope you are excited for the actual first episode next week. Oh, I didn't even talk about when this is going live. Wait, we should talk about that. Continuing on with my YouTube schedule that I've had since I was literally probably 14 and started my first YouTube channel, I'm going to be posting episodes on Mondays at 11:30 a.m. PST. That has been the time I've posted videos since like my very first YouTube channel when I was a kid, which I will talk about more next week. So I'm keeping it a tradition, and it'll go live at 11:30 a.m. Now, for real, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next episode. Have an amazing week, and I will see you soon. Bye.
And I was like, yo.